I'm Michael Burns. Welcome to Wisecrack. Today, I want to talk about the TV and film franchise that kept emergency rooms full of suburban millennial teens for much of the early 2000s. No, not Scrubs, though many teens did go to their local hospitals, hoping to witness tweet antics and psychotic janitors, only to leave sorely disappointed. We are, of course, talking about Jackass.
He's in my ear! Get him out of my ear!
The TV show turned film franchise that saw a bunch of dudes ask life's big questions, like, what if an almost naked adult man crawled across a floor covered in mousetraps? How severely can you destroy a rental car without consequences? And which of your friends has the best sperm?
Rick's got good sperm.
Okay, so the show is not known for its explicitly philosophical themes, but we wanted to see if we could discover some deep themes beneath the reckless surface. So we decided to give it the full, deeper dumb treatment, which is to say, we're going to see if we can present some interpretations of the show that will convince you, and to be honest, us, that Jackass is in fact deep. So let's get into this Wisecrack Edition on Jackass, deep or dumb. And stick around until the end of the video, because I'm going to be doing a quick Q&A session with questions submitted by our patrons. But now, let's get into the video. For those of you who weren't religiously watching MTV in the early 2000s, a quick refresher. Jackass started as a short-lived show where a crew of dudes, led by Johnny Knoxville, performed all types of dangerous, disgusting, and absurd stunts filmed in a super lo-fi manner. The show ended when MTV wouldn't let them put their best ideas on air, so the team took their talents to your local cinema and released a series of films. Jackass the movie.
Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass.
Jackass number 2.
Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass. Whoa!
And Jackass 3D.
Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass.
With a fourth film supposedly coming out later this year. During this run, they've tempted fate with bulls and alligators, used shopping carts, wheelbarrows, and big wheels as off-road vehicles, terrorized Bam Margera's parents repeatedly, and spent way more time at porta potties than the entire Coachella-going population put together. And sadly, it's worth mentioning that things have not been all fun and games for the Jackass crew, with multiple members struggling with addiction and Ryan Dunn tragically dying in a car accident. To help us in our unlikely journey to prove Jackass's depth, we're gonna sort the show's various antics into 3 categories. Body humor, which is anything involving poop, farts, puke, piss, self-inflicted tasers, etc. Pranks, throwing flour on your sleeping friends' faces, slapping your friends with a giant hand, trapping your friends in a limo full of bees. So basically just torturing your friends. And public disruption, skateboarding through Tokyo in panda costumes, stripping in an electronics store, hiding a duct-taped and naked man in a trunk. So let's get started and see if we can get real deep in that Jackass. Let's begin with body humor. Now, I know what you're thinking. Surely, you're not going to try to tell me, an intelligent, worldly, and downright gorgeous Wisecrack viewer, that there is some hidden philosophical depth to a grown man shoving a toy car up his ass, or that watching someone eat a puke omelet is really a commentary on the mass reproduction of art and culture. And it probably isn't, but hear me out. Think about how the human body is represented in today's media. Most of the time it's misleading, deceptive, and makes me want to get straight to work on my 8-pack. There is a multi-million-dollar industry creating apps that allow us to alter our appearances on social media. Influencers put tons of time and effort into staging supposedly natural photos, and whether it's hair plugs or cheek fillers, almost no one gracing our screens these days is living in a good old-fashioned flawed human body. And of course, this all has the effect of making us feel like shit about ourselves for not having dewy skin, chiseled abs, or a gorgeous mullet. But the Jackass boys pull off stunts that highlight the pure, gross animality of the human form. And in the process, they actually offer a much more honest and relatable vision of what a normal human body is actually like, even if you'd never put your own corporeal form onto an actual rocket full of explosives being shot into the sky. And not only do we see raw bodies doing gross things, but we also see the repercussions and implications of these stunts. For example, when Johnny has a mishap trying to do a roller skate jump over the LA River, we follow him to the emergency room, and in later stunts we see him wearing a soft cast, showing the physical damage done. Rather than glamorizing these types of stunts, Jackass makes it clear that they are very dumb and likely to cause injury because these are real people with real bodies. Except for Steve-O, who clearly has vibranium bones because he should absolutely be dead. You could compare this to a standard action film, where heroes jump through glass windows, take a couple of bullets to the leg, drive a car off a bridge, and are still able to walk it off in time to kiss their inappropriately aged lover, who, of course, has perfect hair and makeup after being held hostage by some vaguely Eastern European bad guys. But Jackass reminds us that our bodies don't work that way. Now at this point, you might be thinking that with all the bullshit coming out of my mouth, that I must be doing some sort of reverse Jackass style fecal stunt. But there are actual scholars who think there is something deep going on here too. Berkeley professor Andrew Shanken argues that the myriad ways in which Jackass uses pain, corporal transgression, and public humiliation suggests ties to a more fluid sense of the body, allowing its use as a vehicle for entertainment, even via potentially harmful behavior, to seem more normative. Put simply, it's funny when people fall down. And the comedic simplicity of body-based humor is something we should embrace and celebrate. As Shanken goes on to say, Jackass carries on the physical humor of Charlie Chaplin in an aesthetic mode of decadence. And this might make it possible for Jackass stunts to still be pretty funny 100 years from now.
Redemption is made!
Much like how the physical comedy of Chaplin, the Three Stooges, and the Marx Brothers still holds up. So this makes Jackass's body humor at least kind of deep, but if we're honest, it's also kind of dumb. I mean, watching a grown man pee on another grown man, and in 3D nonetheless, is pretty gross. And some of the penis-based gags tend to play into dated tropes about male sexuality, and worse, they can seem kind of homophobic. Also, they led audience members at screenings of the movies to throw up in their seats, which is definitely not deep, but definitely is funny. Let's step away from the flying porta potties and desecrated display model toilets and talk about the very funny and sometimes brutal pranks the guys pull on each other. If our attempt to make body humor deep felt like a reach, I think there might be a more convincing argument here for why pranks are doing a lot more than just ruining Phil Margera's REM cycle. Poor guy. Well, the pranks are, of course, very funny. They also inject a sense of surprise and wonder into otherwise mundane situations. Many of the show's best pranks take place in pretty boring places, like the halls of a bland production office, the back of a van, or simply during downtime while on set. And though they obviously have the budget for expensive props and effects, the pranks often rely on things most of us have around the house, like a bag of flowers, some super glue, or a stun gun. Okay, probably not the stun gun. The crew's pranking is built on a creative ability to turn generic situations and objects into sites of possibility and surprise. Hi, I'm Michael Burns. Welcome to Wisecrack. What's more, the pranks are almost always filmed in a way that shows us the reactions of the cast and crew. We're often hunched over in the type of laughter that leaves you unable to form coherent sentences. And I don't think it's going too far to say that these pranks create moments of collective joy for both the prankers, the prankies, and us. The audience. More so than lots of comedic entertainment, this leaves us feeling in on the joke. And it's not just joy, as we can feel real empathy with both the performers being pranked, as I too can imagine what it would be like to have a small child kick me in the groin, or with the other guys laughing on the side, as I too can imagine how funny it would be to watch my friend get kicked in the groin by a line of children. And even if at times it feels like they're singling someone out, writer Benedict Carey has noted that practical jokes are far more commonly an effort to bring a person into a group, anthropologists have found. An integral part of rituals around the world intended to temper success with humility, and recent research suggests that the experience of being duped can stir self-reflection in a way few other experiences can, functioning as a check on arrogance or obliviousness. So I guess pranking our friends can lead to self-reflection, and dare I say self-examination, which I guess makes Jackass a fundamentally philosophic enterprise. Too far? Yeah. But you might be thinking, aren't their pranks sometimes kind of mean? And you wouldn't be wrong, as there are occasions where the person being pranked isn't a part of the crew or in on the joke. I have a pretty high tolerance for the brutality of their pranks, but even I felt pretty squirmy watching Bam Margera reduced to tears on the 2 occasions he gets trapped in an enclosed space with live snakes, as a prank. At this point, I imagine many of you remain unconvinced that Jackass is, in fact, deep. But our best chance of changing that is going to be their stunts that involve acts of public disruption. These are the parts of the show where various jackasses enter a shared public space to, mix things up a bit. These stunts usually take a space that's either private or used for the purpose of commerce and turn them into spaces of public performance, transforming a bland business park or suburban mall into a place of communal joy. We see this whether the crew is ripping down a public fountain in a kayak, shredding down a ski slope bare-chested and on a surfboard, or using shopping carts for all types of extremely reckless behavior. And for the lucky civilians who are privy to these disruptions, such moments can create feelings of shock, wonder, joy, and surprise. This is perhaps most evident during the recurring stunt where Preston Lacey, a not small gentleman, chases Wee Man, a not large gentleman, through the street while they are both in their underwear. Or in a related stunt when Preston walks into a grocery store or a porta potty and comes out as Wee Man. Multiple scholars have pointed out that these social disruptions often take place in the types of suburban spaces that represent the dreams of post-war American culture. And it was that culture that produced the types of boredom and suburban malaise that shaped youth culture in the 80s and 90s. The very era when our Jack boys became Jack men. Okay, that felt weird to say. For our buddy Shankin, Jackass grew out of the cultural geography of the post-war suburb. It speaks of unmonitored spaces, the cheap handheld video camera, the liberalizing cultural revolution of the 1960s, and feminism in the 1970s, which sent women back to school and work, and their children into an unsupervised world of play. And where there's unsupervised play, there's bound to be danger. Hi, I'm Michael Burns. Welcome to Wisecrack. No, I can't do it. I'm going home. I'm going home. Stop it. Don't stop filming. Stop filming. So we have cheap consumer goods, empty suburban spaces, and a lack of strict supervision enabled by the safety of America's sprawling zones of strip mall wonder. This all created the perfect cultural conditions for bored kids with skateboards to get a little reckless and turn bland monuments of commerce and safety into sites of danger and transgression. Which is why it's no surprise that Jackass emerged from skateboarding culture, and specifically the magazine Big Brother, where Johnny Knoxville got his start testing stun guns and maces on himself. And indeed, much has been written about the way skateboarding communities have reshaped the ecology of urban and suburban landscapes, with some cities even encouraging skateboarding to reactivate communities. Basically, when the Jackass gentlemen wreak havoc in shopping malls, they infuse them with a type of creativity and performativity that breaks with their intended purpose. And these acts can be seen as critiques of the bland monotony of suburban culture. As Shankin notes, just as the medieval jester mocked the high seriousness of the king, his floppy cap the foil to the crown, so Jackass poses as the self-conscious jester for the court of the suburb. Yet they do so with such harmless good cheer that their terrible honesty holds the court together. Their public stunts also bring a visible excitement and curiosity to the folks lucky enough to be walking by or eating lunch outside when they happen. As sociologist Aisher Paul Sani writes, while discussing the work of fellow Jackass scholar Jory Lagerwey, these public stunts can galvanize interaction among strangers. Because nothing helps strike up conversations among strangers like an elderly woman, who is a man in prosthetics, showing up at an outdoor cafe naked. This might be a leap on my behalf, but this type of social effect isn't too distinct from what French jackasses Jean-Paul Sartre and Alain Badiou would call group subjects, formed out of novel and disruptive situations. For these French bros, something disruptive or novel happening in a previously stagnant setting leads to sharing WTF glances with the strangers around us, potentially bringing us into new relations with those strangers. Okay, I'll admit it, I really do buy this argument, and I think it's probably the best evidence for the show being pretty deep. There's also been some great academic writing on this very topic. So, did we exhaustively prove that Jackass is in fact a deep cultural artifact that future generations will use as a Rosetta Stone to understand the particular contradictions of suburban malaise and the persistence of the male adolescent ego? Yeah, probably not. And while the aspects of the show that turn unknowing civilians into victims and or play on retrograde racial and sexual tropes definitely fall into the category of dumb, the overall artistic merit of the show qualifies as pretty deep, especially for a group of performers that has a designated poop guy. Jackass embraces the simplicity of embodied performativity and finds joy in turning generic spaces of commerce and conformity into sites of bizarre stunts and spectacles. And we're not the only ones who think this, as the Museum of Modern Art in New York held a screening of Jackass 3D as an official event. And I would pay infinity dollars to have been in the room as some stuffy art types saw all that puke and piss in 3D. And maybe one of the best testaments to Jackass's deepness is the continued legacy of this type of body-based humor and performativity in folks from Sacha Baron Cohen to Eric Andre and Natalie Palamides. But what do you think? Is Jackass secretly brilliant, or am I just looking for an excuse to watch grown men roll down a hill inside giant tires and feel smart? Let us know in the comments. And before we go, we wanted to take a second and answer some questions submitted by our patrons on our Discord, something you can be a part of for as little as $5 a month. Just saying. Not David asks, can you help me understand Locke's essay concerning human understanding, even if just book 2? Okay, so basically, qualities are things that help us perceive and understand stuff in the world, and substance is the raw stuff that helps us experience things and get ideas in our minds. But also, you should read his enquiries as they're much more clear. Okay, Greg Powell 419 asks, do you believe knowing and understanding philosophy can lead people to become virtuous? So some of the kindest people I've ever met haven't read a book since high school, and some of the meanest have been distinguished philosophy professors. I think knowing stuff doesn't make you a good person. It's the desire to be virtuous mixed with philosophical knowledge that gets the job done. This is what the ancient Greeks were really good at, that and drinking wine. Okay, finally, Snake Metro asks, how can entertainment be vulgar and gross out humor without it lowering the medium? Okay, not to be that guy, but I think the video you just watched hopefully helped answer this a little bit. Also, check out our video on Eric Andre. But the main thing is, if the vulgar or gross thing is trying to get laughs just because it's gross, it's usually lowering things. But the previously mentioned Sacha Baron Cohen and Natalie Palamides show us how gross and vulgar humor can be used to make us think about some heavy shit. Okay, that's it for now. If you want to join in next time, go to patreon.com/wisecrack and join in on the fun. As always, thanks for watching. Later.